Hi there everybody, and welcome to another video. On today's video I have this BMW X3 2014 F25. It's a 2-liter diesel XDRIVE, and I'm gonna be doing today, I'm gonna be changing the oil and the oil filter as well as the air filter. We're gonna top up some screen wash fluid, and we're also going to have a look at the coolant level and antifreeze percentage. So the first thing is to open the bonnet, and we have that there. Pull that there, and your bonnet should open a little bit. You can then get your hand under here, and there should be a little, easier to do it with two hands, but let me see if I can. Okay, a little bit to the right there. There is a little thing that you need to flick to the side, this little lever here. Then you can open that bonnet, and we have access to the engine. There seems to be a lot of room around this engine. So we're gonna have a look at changing the air filter, oil and oil filter. So we're going to start by adding some screen wash fluid to the screen wash reservoir, which is sitting right here. If you open that little cover there, you may be able to see I've already filled it. So that's where the screen wash fluid goes in. And make sure you use the proper screen. This is rated to -10 degrees C. You might get, this is ready mixed. You can buy it just ready mixed, or you can buy a concentrated one and mix it yourself. But sometimes it's easier to have it just ready mixed, carry it in the boot of your car, and make sure you always keep these topped up, because you're gonna need this constantly, especially during winter, and especially if you drive in the motorways and whatnot. If you don't, then obviously that's gonna be always full. But if you only put water in here and the temperatures drop to really minus temperatures, then that water freezes, expands, it can crack your tank, it can damage the hoses and whatnot. And also you won't get any fluid coming out to wash your windscreen. So that's why we make sure we have the correct fluid in there. Having said that, all of that, we can move on to check our coolant. And I do have this little gadget here which helps me check the antifreeze percentage that is in here. Now this car has been running, it's a little bit hot, so when you open this, be very careful. Let the whatever pressure there might be get out, but I always open it slowly and push it down a bit to release that pressure, because the last thing we want is any coolant, hot coolant, jumping on your face. So they are made for safety, but they can fail obviously, and you can get really nasty burns from very hot coolant. So just be careful, no point rushing. Now we're gonna suck some of that coolant out. This little device is gonna help us see what sort of percentage of antifreeze is in there. And also you may be able to notice the coolant looks a little bit blue, sort of bluish in color, and also is quite nice and clean. And so that tells us there's no oil, there's no contamination in there. Let me just suck a bit more of that liquid. Okay, my device is getting a little bit old, so if there's a little bubble or so up here, it doesn't read very well. But at the moment it's showing me about -18 degrees, and that means the temperature outside will have to be -20 in order for this coolant to freeze. So here in London, that is a reasonable level of antifreeze. We don't need it to be anymore. We haven't experienced tremendous freezing temperatures in many years, so that should be fine. But obviously if you're in the North Pole and the temperature -40, you want your antifreeze to be obviously rated at way more than that, -50 or whatever. So here we use usually 50% of water, 50% of coolant. Anyway, having checked that, I'm happy with that, -18. And now we can check the coolant level. So you need a light, you need to shine a light in there, and in there you're gonna see a mark that says, right, it's a bit difficult to see actually. Let me try. Right, let's try again. In there you can see there is a max, like a ring that shows max. When that ring, if there isn't enough coolant, that ring looks yellow in color, so, or sometimes white, but when there is coolant on it, it looks like that. You can see the coolant on top, just on top of it. That tells me that coolant is at the max, so happy days, don't have to do anything. If you see that little mark that it's got no coolant on it or is below, there is another minimum mark in there, so you may want to top it up. Or if it's even below that, if you can see there's nothing in there, then you may have a leak somewhere. There could be a coolant leak somewhere, and obviously if you top it up, it's fine to top it up, but you will have to do a little bit more investigation. So sometimes it is normal that might be a little bit below the max, and you just top it up to the max and happy days. But if it's way below, if there's nothing in there, there's something else going on. So on today's episode, that is fine, and we don't have to deal with anything. When you close that, make sure it closes like so, and the arrows match. And now we can move on to our air filter. So this is my air filter here. It's a Bosch one, S0459. So this air filter is specific to my car. Sometimes obviously the year or whatever can make the filter slightly different, so make sure you get the correct one for your particular car. Always go by your registration number, or you can go by the chassis, that kind of thing, in order to get the correct parts. Right, I think we can just leave that enough, and our filter is there, you can see it. But what you can do is, if you pull this towards the right, you can get it out of the back, and that gives you a lot more room. Right, since I'm working with one hand, I just need some helping tools here. This filter actually looks, not gonna lie, looks fairly clean. It looks like it was replaced, and not really, I don't think the car's done many miles. Looks like a BMW one. Anyway, since I have a new one, but saying that, it really is not bad at all. It looks like quite new. It's just marked from the obviously the use that it's had, but that would be a bit of a waste if I threw this away for no reason. So we may actually refit that filter back in there, and we can keep the filter that I have. So if you were changing your filter, what you could do actually, before I put that back in there, is go ahead and give that in there a little bit of a clean as well. It just gets a bit dusty sometimes, or insects or things like that. Right, I just gave it a bit of a clean, and I can fit this filter back in there. So that should go in there. If I can do it with one hand, you can definitely do it with two. Now we need to make sure we hook. There's two little things, plastic bits at the bottom of this cover that need to hook into the back of this air filter casing. So you do have to pull it up a bit and then push it down and make sure it goes in, otherwise you won't be able to fit this. It has to sit properly in there, so it may take a little bit of a wiggle or even a bit of a push, because if you're using a new filter, the little the rubber of the filter here is even a bit thicker than the one that I'm reusing. So I may need my two hands to get that in there. Once I had my two hands in action, it was not difficult at all. And then we can close these clips. Usually push them from here and they spring into the right place. And that is done. So now we can move on to the oil and the oil filter. And for that, first thing I'm gonna do is open the oil filler cap here. Just leave it sitting there, especially if you're working outside. You don't want anything going in there. And we are also going to pull the dipstick open here. Just open it a little bit and leave it there as well. And with a 27mm ratchet here, we are going to open our oil filter, which is sitting back there. And that shouldn't really be that tight. Usually gets tight into something like 25 Newton meters if you use a torque wrench. Otherwise, it shouldn't be tight at all, unless it hasn't been changed for a long time. And okay, if you use a long extension, it might get stuck there, so I may have to put that back in a little bit in order to get my ratchet out. Okay, hopefully I can just undo it by hand. Yep. Right. You can leave this there for a few minutes just so it drains itself out, because if I take it out now, it's probably gonna drip oil around, and we want to keep things clean, so I'll just leave it there for 5 minutes. While that is happening, I can show you the oil filter that I have. It's a Bosch one P7205. That's what it looks like, and it comes with an O-ring and a new washer. So usually the bolt for draining the oil is a 17mm. It's got the little copper washer, which we want to replace. So that is my filter. And well, while we wait for that, I'm using a ramp today, so I'm gonna get the car up in the air, and it's really useful to have a ramp so you can drain the oil. Otherwise you have to use axle stands, so always read your manual on how to use axle stands and whatnot, or watch other videos. I don't normally do videos on that kind of thing. Okay, let's get our filter out now. There we are. So we're gonna prepare that in a minute. Once we leave the car draining its oil, then we'll prepare our filter. Now I'm gonna get the car up and open the sump plug. So looking at the car from underneath, we have this little cover here held in by two 8mm bolts. I've already removed one, and if we take this one out, which I've loosened as well, this little cover will come out and it will reveal the bolt for the sump. So we're gonna drain the oil from there. Right, make sure you get yourself an oil pan to catch the oil and get your 17 mil ready in there. I have a nice ratchet here that opens up, and it has you can extend it and gives you a bit more leverage. So crack that open, and then you can open that bolt. Just remember, if the engine has been running a lot, that oil that will come out can be very hot, so you can burn yourself with it as well. So just wait a little bit for it to cool down, or obviously it'll be okay if the engine only warmed up a bit. There we are. So it should be about 5.2 liters draining out of there. So we're gonna let that drain. Okay, removing this filter is not rocket science. You have to grab it and pull it out, and it can be quite hard to do so because it gets a bit stuck. It is hard to fit it in to begin with. And the other thing is the O-ring, which I already removed a little bit here. That O-ring just comes out of the groove like so, and of course you have a new O-ring to fit, and just make sure you put it in the correct groove, which is the one at the bottom there. So just obviously have a look at where you remove it from and put it in there. Then I'm going to fit a little bit of multi-purpose grease around this O-ring. You can also use a bit of oil, a bit of the oil that you're going to use for filling up your engine, whichever one you want. Now this part here, it's quite hard to push in there, but that's what we basically need to do. You need to push it in there all the way in, like so. It can be a bit hard, but it should get in there. And then once we lower the car, we're gonna fit this into our oil filter housing. So we just need to match this with a little hole that's sitting on the side of the housing, but again, not rocket science. So that is ready, and we also have our new copper washer. Bolt is there, and we are pretty much ready. I think the oil has finished draining now, so we'll go and fit our new our sump plug bolt. Okay, so here we are. Just fit your new bolt in there. That is still dripping a little bit, to be fair, but we can just go ahead and put our new, well, I keep saying new, our sump plug bolt, and get it in as much as you can with your fingers, so you make sure it's going in the correct direction. Now we can tighten the bolt, and if you have a torque wrench, you can torque this to about between 30 and 35 Newton meters. Just don't overdo it, don't damage anything. That's the main thing, avoid damaging things. I haven't got obviously a torque wrench at the moment. I just use my wrench. I do this all the time, so pretty much know how much force to apply. But if you're new and you don't know, you don't want to over tighten or break, damage the thread or anything like that, because that plug is connected to the sump. If the sump thread gets damaged, then you are doomed. You have to change the sump. Fair enough, if the bolt gets damaged, the thread, you can obviously get a new bolt, but if the actual sump thread gets damaged, then that's another matter. And now you can clean the area with some brake cleaner. so that this usually rinses the oil quite well, the brake cleaner, and we can put our little cover back in there and then lower the car. Okay, it's time to fit our new filter. So we just want to find a little slot where that goes into, and you will be able to see it on the side there. It can be a bit difficult to see, but it is there. And so all we want to do is just, if you put your filter in there, you'll be able to, you just need to rotate it a little bit and it will sort of go into the correct slot. And then you'll be able to screw that on. The other way that people do it is basically they push the filter into there first, and then you put the cap onto the filter. So whichever way you think is easier, then go ahead and do that. And now we can tighten that. It does say 25 Newton meters, so again, if you have a torque wrench, use it. But as you saw, I've tightened that by hand as much as I could. It's almost closed. So the reason I did that is to make sure that the filter, that little bit sticking out on the filter, may go into the hole that it is supposed to go. Because if you just put it in there and force it, obviously you won't be able to do it by hand because it's hard. Okay, that's it. And now all we need to do is put some oil in here. And you can also, we're gonna pull the dipstick out here so we can have a look at it. So your dipstick is gonna have 2 marks. It is written in there. This side here will be the minimum and this side will be the maximum. I'm just gonna clean this and so you can see that a little bit more clear. Okay, so I've cleaned it. You can see there min and max. So the information I found is that this engine takes 5.2 liters of oil. So I'm gonna go ahead and fit about 4 liters because I'm not 100% sure. I just want to put 4 liters and then we can check our dipstick where we are, because we want to be obviously at the max once we finish topping the oil. And it may be that it's a little bit above them. It should be above the max, because once you run the engine, some of the oil will go into the oil filter housing and it will stay there. And sometimes it's about 300 mils that stay there. So therefore, then when you check this again, it goes down to the max. So that's what, then you have the correct filling. So, but I want to go carefully. So 4 liters first and then see where we are at. This is the oil that I'm using, ACEA C3 5W30 long life quartz. Usually the C3 one is for diesel engines. So oil goes in there and that's where I'm gonna put it. Right, I got my 4 liters in there. Let's check our oil, see how much is in there. Push that lipstick in there, get it out and see where we're at. So I can see the shiny area there. We're pretty much at the minimum with the 4 liters, so we can definitely go ahead and put 5. So the rest of my oil, just put it in there. nearly. Always has to be a mess when you do dealing with oil. Just when everything appears to be going fine and clean and everything, a spill has to happen, so don't be surprised. Right, I'm gonna let those and then I have an extra 2.2 to add in any case, so we'll see what that reads now. I got 5 liters. Okay, so those 5 liters have put the oil up to here, almost at the max, and as I mentioned, we want to be possibly where it actually reads max here. So when you run the engine, it will go down to there. So it seems like 5.2 liters is the correct amount. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put another 0.2 there. Did I say I'm just gonna put another 2 liters? I meant another, if I said that, that's wrong, obviously. It's 5.2, so another 200 mils will make the 5.2. So I've added those 200 mils. Now we can check our oil again. See where we're at. And yeah, now you can just see the shine at the max, where the max here is. So what we can do now is run the car, and if you want you can check these afterwards, but I'm happy with that. I've got no reason to think that is a wrong level now. Let's start the car now and make sure it's all running as expected. So car starts fine. We don't have any warning lamps, any engine oil pressure lights or anything like that, or low oil or anything like that. That's what we're looking for. And then you can go down to the engine bay and also make sure you haven't forgotten anything, obviously. So everything seems good. Close that, we put our filter, we put our beefcake in, and if you wanted to, you can have a quick look underneath, make sure there's no oil leaking from underneath, and that's pretty much it. So having said that, I hope the video helps. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, go ahead and fire, and otherwise we'll see you all in the next video. Thank you for watching.